Hello, everybody, and welcome to this first episode of the year of the Hacking Visual Studio show. I'm your host, Matt Kristensen, and who do we have with us today? John. Hello, John. How are you, my
We
friend?
have John. I'm
Yay.
the stand-in James for the day. I'm
Uh-huh.
your sidekick. I will any knock jokes you need, asked and answered. I'll try and work in with those. So
Wonderful.
and I'm, as always, happy to be here, especially because I love extensions.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the lifeblood of Visual Studio. It's what makes us makes everything run.
There you go.
Or is it? Maybe I'm just speaking from my own perspective. I don't know. Could be.
You're slightly biased here.
I'm slightly biased. I am addicted to writing extensions. I can't stop it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Not necessarily my addiction to extensions, but we're going to talk about a bunch of things because this is the first time we're back since the beginning of December. So we've been out for what, 5 weeks, maybe 6?
It's been a while.
It's been a while. And there's some, maybe not so much news, but more like things happened. And I want to talk about what happened. And some of them are like maybe not that related to extensions, but they totally are potentially. But I think they're relevant for anyone watching anyway. So maybe we should just get started. I have a hard time figuring out where to start because I have 4 things that I all think are really interesting. So maybe we should just start with like some.
There you go. I popped your screen up.
Okay. Cool. So okay, we're looking at my screen. In that case, let's go.
Is that all right?
No, it's wonderful.
Okay, good.
It's wonderful.
Oh, I'm sorry, but first, normally we take questions as they go, but I think this question we need answered right away. Jason says, how many extensions has Mads created now?
Oh, let's find out. Publisher name, Mads Kristensen. 177. Can that be right? No. See, this is I'm not doing it right. This is not publisher name. Is it just publisher? Roland 174. I mean, that may be true, but some of them are duplicates because some of them are like, oh, this is a version for 2019, and then there's a version for 2022, but it's the same extension, same code base or whatever. So 174, as it were.
One thing I always appreciate is you have pretty good icons for yours or logos or whatever.
I'll show you I'll show you my secret. It's not really a secret. So, yeah. So these are not my icons. These are icons that Visual Studio ship with.
That's fair. Okay.
With the exception of Web Essentials here, I designed this.
It's nice.
And NPM, like I use logos of the things if I'm implementing NPM, then I use the NPM logo here.
Yeah.
But other than that, they're just all like extension. They're just icons that are in Visual Studio.
Okay.
But actually, so what I wanted to show was, so over the holidays, I wrote 3 extensions, and we'll talk about exactly why I did that. There's a meaning to the madness. Why 3, and what do they have in common, and what was the purpose of this? So I'll talk about that. But let's first go and take a look at something that I thought was kind of interesting. Here's one of the new ones. It's actually not a new extension, but what I did was I completely rewrote it, so now it has all the features. Before it was just basically it had like a text-made grammar file for PackageDev files, so that you would get syntax highlighting for PackageDev files. And now I have a full language service. But
what is the difference between those? What does a full language service give you?
Right. Okay. So the full language service basically gives you everything that the editor can do in Visual Studio. So of course you get syntax highlighting, but you also get like brace matching, same word highlighting, IntelliSense, error squigglies, error list integration, to-do comments, commenting, uncomment, like keyboard, Control KU, Control KC, that stuff. Smart indent, adornments, suggested actions or quick fixes or light bulbs or whatever you want to call them, and so on and so forth, right? Outlining or code folding.
Okay.
So you get all this sort of stuff in a full language service, and you can control it completely. Text-made grammar is basically just an XML file or a JSON file that describes in regular expressions how to colorize a file. So usually there's a big difference between the two, but there's also similarities because a language service can be driven off of regular expressions, which is the type of language service that I like to write. So that's what this is, just because it's easy. So anyway, so I did write this one, and I also did another one. I did Markdown Editor V2. Didn't I call it the Markdown Editor 2022? I thought I did. So let's just search for Markdown. I rewrote the Markdown editor completely, and I'll show you why in a moment. But there's a couple of things that these extensions that I wrote, they share. I want to start with the first one. This is one that I actually was inspired by Jan Duran. I noticed that in some of his extensions, he at the bottom of his extension or somewhere in the description, he calls out for asking people to give him a 5-star rating. I'm like, yeah, that's a kind of a good thing. So here's what I did. At the bottom of, I zoomed down instead of in. At the bottom of each of these, I basically have like a little blurb here about how can I help? And I'm saying, hey, can you give me a 5-star rating? Right? Or if you find some bugs or you have feature requests, head over to the GitHub repo to open issues if one doesn't already exist. And I say, hey, pull requests are also very welcome, since I can't always do everything myself. It's a personal project, so my time is limited. What I really like about that is that it kind of frames the effort and energy that I have available to put into this. Right? It sets expectations a little bit. Sometimes people, they expect us open source maintainers to or extenders or whatever, to always fix everything immediately that they have an issue with. And I feel like framing things as, hey, I do this as a passion project. It's a kind of, not my full-time job. I'm not going to be super duper responsive all the time. And then finally I said, hey, another way to help out is to sponsor me on GitHub. So this was kind of a weird one, right? And I wanted to put that in there because I wanted to have something that was something I thought that was too much for people wanting to do. So they would settle for the thing that's below that. Yeah. So John, in restaurants, right, the most sold bottle of wine is not the
second most expensive, right?
It's the second most cheapest, because no one wanted to buy the cheapest. Like, oh, that's too much. That's like, no, I'm not, I'm not going to sink that low or whatever. So I'll just do the second one, which is like $2 more, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about what if we can do something similar to here? Like, okay, people give a 5-star rating. Well, maybe they're not in the mood for it right now or whatever. So let me do something that they really don't want to do.
So they'll settle for the next
best. See what happens. And so I've heard
that's a very common thing in marketing. They'll have it's called price anchoring, I believe, and they'll basically have a top most expensive luxury item that they don't anticipate people buying almost ever, but then people will buy the second most expensive thing. So my wife actually, she sells some things she sews online, and I advised her to do that, and it totally worked. She had you could get a rush order, and then you could get a immediate shipment, like some sort of ridiculous thing, and it was super expensive. I was like, just make it ridiculously expensive, and then people will bump up the second most expensive one. It totally worked. It was kind of crazy. So.
See, that's amazing. But yeah, I guess this all works, right? It's all psychology.
Nice.
So I don't know if it works, right? In this particular case, because not enough time has passed for me to actually measure it. But it was funny that when I did that, within 2 days or something like that, I did get 3 ratings on something that has in the hundreds of installs. Is not bad.
Someone did point out that you had misspelled sponsor, but maybe that was intentional also.
Sponsor. Oh, that's embarrassing. Okay.
But maybe that draws attention to it. It's all psychology going on here. That's really cool.
But I did see some people rating things, not just this one, but also the PackageDev one, which is kind of almost such a weird one because it had 0, right? And it's been out for years, and all of a sudden I got 1. It's like, oh, why did I get 1? All of a sudden, after 2 years or 4, how many years I had that text-made version of this up there. So, okay, so maybe there's something to it. Maybe it works, right?
Can you quickly explain what PackageDev is?
Yeah, it's a file.
And I think you already go over this a decent amount. on this, but just, for people watching, it's a
So
little bit of a more rare concept.
Yeah, so a PackageDev is you can see here what the file looks like. So here's a screenshot of the editor. So you get nice highlighting, but it's basically a way to write registry keys. So you can they're part of the extension workload. So whether you're manually writing these or not, the Visual Studio V6 compiler will produce a PackageDev file automatically and put into your V6 to your extension container output file, and it basically allows it sets registry keys that allows Visual Studio to like invoke your extension at the right time, know what components are in there, and how to interact with your extension. So so it's a very, very basic thing. You basically have your you basically start with having like the registry key path, and then underneath you have all the different sub keys, I guess you could say, that you have under each of those. So it's a very basic file here. That's one of the reasons I did that, because it's like a simple format there, and it lends itself well for regular expression parsing as well, because it's so simple.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so I did this, but then something funny happened. I actually also got a sponsor. So that was kind of funny. So hey, maybe there's something to it, right? So someone actually did sponsor. And so let's take a look here. Here's what I did. So in my repos for the extensions that I wrote, I added a .github file. Mm-hmm. And in there you have funding.yaml. And this is all it does. Funding YAML, you just basically write your name, your GitHub name. And when you do that, then on your repo, you get one of these sponsor buttons showing up. Boom, just like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so anyone can just sponsor. So anyway, so I thought that was kind of a fun way to like push star ratings. I don't care about sponsorships. I don't care if I get any. That's not the point. The point was to get to see if I can get more star ratings. So I did a few other things. I added a code of conduct. I added some issue templates. And so now when you go in and you say, hey, I want to, create a new issue, it makes a difference between a bug report and a feature request. And it also, like, if you do a bug report, it kind of asks for, like, here's a template for it, and it automatically puts a bug label on there. See, there's a label.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And if it's a feature request, it's enhancement. So I feel like that's often missing, that I have to go into triage afterwards and figure out, well, what is a feature request? What's a bug? And figure that out. So I feel like this is kind of nice. And then
I've done those before, issue templates, and then pull request templates also. Back when I was setting up a lot of repos for .NET Foundation, we set up automation that ran depending on, things being filled in, and setting labels like you're doing there and stuff like that.
Yeah. Cool. I wonder if someone has a good pull request template for that works really well with like an extension. If so, please share it in the comments or in the live chat or something like that, or tweet it. Because I'm sure there's something that is unique to extensions that we can benefit from. Maybe there is, if there is, let's see if we can get into the standard template. But what I'm trying to do is to have a folder called .github that is a generic folder that I can put into any single V6 project in the world, and that requires zero change, zero modification for it to just kind of light up and work. Okay. There is one thing where that might fall down, and that is that I put in a GitHub Action. So I'm super excited for this. This is kind of a new topic. So I put in GitHub Actions. So I used to use AppVeyor as my CI server to run my builds and all that sort of stuff. But I now use GitHub Action. That means everything is now confined to just GitHub. It runs the builds, does everything. I set up a few parameters, and that's it. And it does everything the other thing did. I had some help from Tim Heuer from the web team.
Yeah.
And there are some other things. I'm using some other scripts that other people wrote. And what's really cool about this one is that it uploads to the Visual Studio Marketplace.
It does it all for you then. So it
does
builds
everything.
and then uploads.
Yeah.
How did you set up the upload?
So that's down here. So that's someone else that wrote this.
Okay.
Here. So it uses a different, it uses a script someone else wrote. And then you just have to add a secret to your repository. So if you go up to settings, there's something called secrets, and blah blah, and here, right? So you can add your secret to it.
Nice.
And that's basically, so you have to go into the marketplace and figure out how to get your publish token and put it into secrets, and then it just runs. And so what's really wonderful here is that this happens automatically. So now whenever I push to master or the main branch, it goes and runs all the unit tests, builds, all this sort of stuff, and produces artifacts that people can download from the build output itself. So if I go to the actions tab here and you click on the latest build here, for instance, you can see here the V6 is right down here for download, right at the bottom here. That's the artifact, the output. So I always have that. So there's that CI build that if, I want someone to, hey, can you test this real quick? Then they go ahead and do that. But of course, it also uploads it to the V6 gallery, to the open V6. So v6gallery.com, which is the this other place, right? Where like our staging environment or our, it's like an open source CI platform or CI place for extensions. Okay. So it still does all those things. But when I manually run this, so if I go to my build script here and manually invoke it by saying run workflow, it will then also put it up to the marketplace.
Okay.
That's one way to dispatch that. The other one is if I commit a change and I, in square brackets, put the word release, it also does that. So, and if I do a pull request, it doesn't do any of those things. It doesn't put anything on the V6 gallery. It doesn't put anything on the Visual Studio Marketplace. And it doesn't create a new build. A new release on my GitHub repo. Okay. So that's another cool thing this does. Whenever I push to the marketplace, it also creates releases. So I can go back in time and say, okay, the various different releases that I put on the marketplace, they're all available right here on GitHub to download.
Wow.
So that solves this old problem that I've always had, where people say, hey, I need that old version that did things a little bit quirky or differently. And I'm like, sorry, I just have the latest. I don't have any historical versions. Well, problem solved. I have all of them.
So there's a question that came in. Let me try and answer it to see if I've been paying attention. So Andy says, if you publish something to the Visual Studio Gallery, would other people looking at the repo have your credentials? But the thing you showed there is any secret you're going to put in your secrets in your settings. And so anything that you don't want people to be able to see, you hide that away in settings, right?
Yeah. So the personal access code to the marketplace is hidden away in GitHub secrets under the name vs PublishAccept, whatever name you want to give it. I gave it this name. I think that was the example that was given from when I used this particular script. And
those secrets are not part of people looking. Nobody else can see those. That's not logged in.
They live hidden in the on the repo. I don't think I can even see them. I can just once you've created them, you can't see them again. You have to like recreate them, I think, or create a new or something like that. Yeah. So there's no security breach here for that. Yeah.
That's great. So other people could copy that, like other people could use this as well, that workflow, right? I mean, they'd do any necessary tweaks and set the.
Yeah. Let me show you how it works. So here's my PackageDev. Oh, I thought I changed the theme back to blue. Okay, I'll do that now.
Just not red. Has James tried to get you into this team red?
No.
It's bizarre. he like non-ironically uses the red theme.
Oh man.
Visual Studio Code.
I saw someone hating on that on Twitter.
Well, I'm one of those people. I'm just like, it's unsettling. It's too much.
I think there's a red theme for VS2 and a pink one.
He created that just to mess with me.
Oh no. All right.
Yeah.
So here's that same file right here. So when you upload to the marketplace, it also takes your README file. Okay.
Yep.
So here's my README. I should fix sponsor, huh?
There you go. That's a good use case here.
There we go. Yeah. So we should fix that. And then look at this VS publish JSON. And I think somewhere here I point to VS publish.json. Right? This is the build script. So VS publish.json. Let's just look at the files just to see that they are there in so they are right here. Right. So I got my VS publish JSON is kind of next to my README file. Okay. So in the root of my repo. So because in my README file I have I have PNGs, I have GIFs, I have things that are part of my README, and they have to be uploaded with my extension as well. So in my VS publish JSON file, I have to specify those assets. Say path on disks and target path. And I do feel like this is like a little too verbose. That's like, why can't I just say path on disk arts, and then that be it? Like, just take everything in that folder. But you can't, so you have to go through and take them all individually. You have to point to what's your name of your README file, what's the publisher name. You can give it your repo name. That's the one that's going to be listed in on the marketplace, right? So when you go down in the marketplace and you see your detail, that's what's going to be listed there. And then also, what is the internal name? So internal name means, if we look at what the name of this extension here is, I'm going to zoom in. So publisher name, this is the URL, publisher name dot internal name. That's how to think about that.
Okay.
So you decide, so by the internal name, you specify what should be after the publisher name here. So it has to do with the URL and only the URL. That's the only place it's kind of visible. So, and you can give it some categories, and you get IntelliSense for this, by the way, right? So it's kind of nice. Yay, JSON schema. And you can also give more. There's a plenty more things you can do here. You can set other things. It's actually interesting. You can set description and icon and things, which will then override what's in your V6 manifest. So that's kind of interesting. I haven't done it. Yes.
We had a couple of questions come in and a comment. One was, Andy said, does it create new versions automatically, or do you need to increment the version?
It increments the version automatically. So that happens during build time. So during build, it increments the version and then it runs the build. So this is just like the old PowerShell script that I did. So if you use that there before you use the PowerShell script directly, it works the exactly the same way here. So kind of neat.
Okay. And this one's a comment, not a question, but Janisku says you should have your own theme, the Hacking Visual Studio theme, just for this show.
Oh man, like with a background picture or something like that.
Something like that. That could be pretty neat. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a big question, but I think it is useful for people like that are new to this or whatever. So is it easy to make an extension for Visual Studio? And I know that's kind of a lot of what this show is about, but can you, for people that are new to this, where would you point somebody for getting started and learning how to write your first extension?
I would say right now, the best way to get started is to go to the v6cookbook.com. v6cookbook.com. That's where I would go. It has videos. It has like what tools do you need? What's the anatomy of an extension? What are the different files? What do they mean? How do you write your first extension? Like, how do you create the project? It's like it takes you basically by the hand and walks you through things. And then you have recipes for how to do menus, commands, tool windows, so on and so forth. Settings, options, notifications, and I can go on. So So this is the place to go. And is it easy to write extensions? It's easier than it used to be, that's for sure. I don't know if I would say it's easy. I think there's a learning curve here, because let's say if you want to write a console app, you don't really need to know a lot of concepts about the environment you're running in, except for what are the boundaries of or the limits of a console app. And those are kind of easy to understand. It's text-based, so you don't have UI, right? You don't, stuff like that. When it comes to something as complicated as running inside Visual Studio, well, there's a lot more stuff going on and a lot more things maybe you have to be aware of. And so I feel like the complexities are maybe not necessarily just the sort of the API level. It's conceptually the constraints in which you're running in.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That is cool. Tim's wondering if you're the best person we could get to talk about extended Visual Studio. We'll let that one go.
I probably wouldn't be, actually. I'm definitely the loudest one.
That
might not be the same as the best one.
I wanted to point out one cool thing, because you're showing some really neat stuff with the GitHub Actions and automatic build and stuff. Mm-hmm. And a great way that I recently learned about this. Actually, let me share my screen. Let me see if I can mess this up. Okay, share screen. I recently did a Learn module. James and I led a Learn module, and we did publishing a Blazor WebAssembly app using Azure Static Apps. Uh-huh. And it's really cool because it configures all this stuff for you. So you build something. I'm trying to share my screen and it's like kind of hanging, but it actually sets up automatic build and it does publish to Azure for you. And so you like go through and code the stuff in Visual Studio, and every time you do a commit, it's going to build, and it builds a staging site and a publish site. And it's a great way to learn like just some of that automation stuff with GitHub Actions. So I guess I'm not going to share my screen because my computer is unhappy with me, but I'll put the link to this because it's pretty neat. I think Tim should be happy because his name's up on the screen right now. He's getting
it. And I don't know when Tim joined, but did you hear that I did call out that you were the one helping with this? I just want to say, Tim Heuer. If it wasn't for Tim Heuer, this would not have happened. I would not have been on GitHub Actions, and I would not have had like the automatic deployment up to the marketplace. And I'm very, very, very happy that I do. It's like I should have done this years ago, and I can't believe it took this long. I will encourage all of you to do the same. The speed of which I can go from, like, I just make a check-in and put like the words release in square brackets somewhere in my commit message. I'll show it to you, because if you just made a fix in the let's actually just run one. So I fixed, what did I fix? I fixed the
spelling of sponsor.
The spelling of sponsor. So here's what I would do. I would say fixed typo, and then in square, let me zoom in. And then I'm just in square brackets, right? Release. There we go. And Control Enter. Control Enter commits and pushes to remote.
Ooh.
So now that's running. So if we jump over here and look at actions, we can see fixed typo. It's already here, so it's already started. And I can see first it runs my build, and then it will run publish afterwards. So let's go ahead and just take a peek. So this is going to take a couple of minutes, right? It takes a few minutes to run through it all. Do I have unit tests in this project? I've started doing unit tests recently. It's very strange.
Oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
There you go.
So yeah, I do have unit tests. Very strange. So are there any more questions? I want to move on to sort of another thing that I feel like is kind of a big thing.
Let me see. Just one other thing is Andy's pointing out, it's as simple as just copying this build.yaml, make a few changes, make that, set up that secret, and other people could use this exact thing, right? I mean, it's
affirmative. That's correct. That's exactly the goal of what I wanted to do here. And I don't know if I drove Tim nuts when he helped out with like figuring this out, is that I want something that's generic in nature that works for all extensions. Now, I haven't tried this for extensions where you have multiple extensions in one repo. For instance, if you've split your extensions with the shared projects to have, target 2019 and then another target for 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I actually do have extensions that are like that, so I'll get to it at some point. But it's something that if you wanna try that on your extension out there, please go ahead, and then let's see if we can come up with a quintessential, drop in place always works type of situation. That would be fantastic. There was actually one thing that I saw here that I fixed in another episode, not another episode, but another extension, is that my output directory has to be, instead of being relative like this, because you would think when you run MS build on a solution and you give an output directory and you do ... this is relative to the solution file, right? Wrong. It's relative to the individual CS_proj files in the solution. And so they don't. So depending on your folder structure of those individual projects, they might not end up in the same output directory. If you do this, it now puts it at the root of the drive. So so we can do this.
So Tim asked a question, which actually was something I was thinking but feeling not confident enough to ask, because I thought you could do this, but I wasn't sure. So you could also publish this as a marketplace action, and somebody else could use multiple v6 as the input to a publish, which would be pretty neat.
Okay, so
you can publish actions for other people to reuse.
So community, here's what we're going to do. Let's do something that is a little bit more official, or a little bit more, doesn't have a single point of failure. Let's create that. That's what Tim is saying. Let's create the generic one that we put on the marketplace, but it lives as a repo under the v6 community organization.
That's a great idea.
So that there's no one single owner or whatever. Say what?
Yeah. I should have taken credit for this. I shouldn't have shown Tim's comment, because now Tim gets all the credit.
So if anyone wants to go ahead and try that out, let's go ahead and do it. And then if you're not already a member of have write access or whatever to this, I can create that repo, and you can start just playing around. We'll just add you, and you can start playing around with it on the v6 community. That would be fantastic, because I do feel like if you compare this to what I had with the app Heuer, like this is 3 times as long, 4 times, maybe 5 times. Like it's just so much more of a boast. So if we can cut that down to basically saying, hey, do what this thing over there at the v6 community does, and then voila. And then you just give it some parameters. Like you specify what are the file names, or should I also run tests or whatever. Okay. Fantastic. Good idea, Tim.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on.
Sounds good. Yep, that's about all the questions.
That's all of it. Okay. So I want to show you something new. So let me first show you this. Let's open a PackageDev file. So you can basically just go into any extension, go to their output directory, so bin and debug. Oh, this one, bin, debug. And you can find PackageDev file. It's right here. Visual Studio generates it automatically. Oh, why does it do that? I don't know if I have an extension something, but I get this with, do you want to save the file when I close it? And the file is not dirty. It annoys me, and I think I need to do a repair on my installation. So here's the PackageDev file. Here we actually see this extension in action. I have the extension installed on my machine, right? That's why we see it here. So let me show you some cool things that it does. Let's just write a new registry key. So see here. So I open the bracket, and it automatically closes it for me. I get that. Same with $ here, because I want to put in root key. Oh, no, I didn't fix that yet. Okay, so I don't have the latest. Let's run it. I uncommented IntelliSense. Funny enough. Here we go. So here's the same. To bump the fonts, so I should be able to say root key. See, I get IntelliSense, but check this out. I get IntelliSense directly into the registry. So this gives me IntelliSense through the. Isn't that amazing? Through the registry.
Sorry, I was answering a comment. I got distracted at just the wrong time. Here, let me switch back and see the amazing thing. I'm sorry. Okay. Whoa, that is amazing. Honestly, that is very cool.
And see, here's that PackageDev. So it's already in my registry. So this looks at the current instance registry. And so, you can just go through it. It gives validation. So if you do something wrong, it'll tell you. It automatically, look here, it puts things in the error list. It says unclosed registry key entry. Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. I should, and then it does other things like if you accidentally, let's say you want to create a default key, that's the @ sign. So you do something like this, and then you do, foo. It complains. It says, hey, to set a registry key's default value, use an @ symbol without the quotation marks. Oh yeah. Okay. So it catches like, there's validation. It not only does it squiggle, but it shows me in the error list. Okay. Now, the reason I'm showing you all this is not because PackageDev is interesting. Think of these concepts if you want to write a language. I get code folding or outlining, as it's called in Visual Studio land. In Visual Studio Code, it's called code folding, I believe. So that's there. What else do we have? I can comment, Control KC, Control KU, a comment on comment. I can format document. That makes it much easier to kind of look at here, right? So if you've ever tried to write this in the past, like an editor extension that, provides IntelliSense and do all these things. Oh, same word highlighting, which is actually really nice.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to something like this, because you might have a what's it called, like a GUID or something like that, and you want to find all instances of that GUID you're using or something, so you get all this. And so let's see how we did that. If anyone has tried to or have built an extension in the past for languages, that is a lot of files, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, when you write a language, here's what I've learned. I've done this. I don't know when I wrote my first language, but it's many years ago, like 8 years ago or something. And I've written several since. You always want to write your language in its own Visual Studio independent code. So whether that's you want to add a new project to your solution, like a net standard project, for instance, which I have done in one of these other of the 3 extensions that I've been working on, by the way. But you want something that lives on its own, that doesn't have Visual Studio dependencies, something you can unit test very, very easily. And you want to use that to parse your document. And I have that. I just put it in here. It's a parser. So my document parser here is pretty simple. I basically go in, I take them line by line. I have some regular expressions, and I just go in and parse the line. And it's very simple. And as I go through these, I start creating unit tests for them. And so one of the issues with writing these languages is from the time you start writing the parser till you can see a colorization or syntax highlighting on the screen, if you F5 and you start up the experimental instance of Visual Studio, that's a long time. And you can imagine like how hard it is to go through trial and error or to make modifications and then, let's see how that looks now. Did I get it right? You definitely don't want to do that, right? You want to be able to create a parser that you can create just by unit tests as your method of verifying that things work and that you've tagged everything up correctly, or not tagged things up, but that you have tokenized things right. Or lexed things. And you can either do it manually, like I do it manually because this is such an easy thing.
I was just going to ask that because there are libraries and kind of common things out there that handle.
Yeah. So like Antler is the big one, the most popular one for writing your own sort of language parser. And it depends, again, especially if you want to do like a real language where you have like nested curly brace scopes and the parentheses and stuff like that, and you can have like nesting. You need something more powerful than regex, right? You need something that probably like Antler would be a good one. Or if you can do a character stream and then just, I don't know. It's kind of hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Now, is this is this as async as possible?
Hell yeah.
Okay.
It's completely async.
Because that's also something, right? If you can, I don't know how some languages you have to parse the whole document before you can really understand it, right? But some other things you can do top to bottom.
So check this out. So my document here, you can either create one by giving it a text buffer or by giving it text lines. But the one, if you give it a text buffer, it basically calls the one with lines, which is just a string array. So my unit test uses this one that has that just takes an array of strings. So that's a line by line. So my unit test just breaks it up and passes in the lines as parameters, right? And then then it processes this and fires it off and forgets it. So it like moves it to a background thread. So process async. Let's see, where is that? Process async. Look at this. So it returns task, and you know what this line does? No one knows what this line does, I think.
I'm glad. I was like, I don't know what that does.
This tells Visual Studio to move execution to a background thread.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay.
So as soon as I instantiate I create a new instance of this document, it kicks off parsing in the background. And then when it's done, if it succeeded, it invokes an event. So I have an event somewhere down here that I can listen to, processed. Okay. So the point is that, and this one, when you give it a text buffer, it starts listening to text buffer changes. So this now integrates with Visual Studio. So you can see here how I can actually make it a gray area where I say, okay, because I have everything in the same project, I didn't move out my language parser to its own project. I can be a little flexible here as long as I don't harm my unit testing capabilities. Okay, so that's what I did here. And
so there's a question in chat if how that compares to task.yield.
Task.yield yields back to the calling thread.
Okay.
I believe. And so someone that knows more about this, please help out. I don't believe that it moves you to the background thread. I'm quite certain it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah. It just yields back to the caller, so the caller can move on, do things. Okay.
This is giving me fond memories of do events in Visual Basic.
Oh, I forgot about those. So I would say, regardless of what you're doing, make sure that you do the parsing separately. Okay, so let's figure out how do we then take our parsing. So the purpose of the parsing is to produce an AST, produce a tree view of all the different things. So it could be like there's a registry key with a variable reference, and then the next thing is there's a property where the first part of the property is the name, and then there's an equal signs, and then there's a value, and you've tagged it up.
Mm-hmm.
And now you just need to translate that kind of abstract syntax tree into something Visual Studio knows how to put into the editor, right? And so this is where this new thing that I want to show you is really, really interesting. So, oh yeah, I don't know if I showed you. I forgot to show you. This one has drop-down bars up here too. So I can
that's nice.
navigate between the various different things here. And then I just thought it would be kind of cool because I have nothing to put in the left one. So I just put, hey, this is powered by the PackageDev language and then the version. I thought that was kind of cute in sort of a grayed out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you can see here that these are the only files I have. This is all that it takes for me to do all these things that I showed you that this thing can do. Like classification, which means colorization, like syntax highlighting. And then all the brace matching, brace completion, IntelliSense, same word highlighting, outlining, arrow tagging, arrow list, and so on and so forth. So here's how it works. I need 3 things. This one has 5 files. I need 3. That means if you want to do sort of a basic thing, you just need 3 things. So the first one you need is a LanguageFactory. Okay, so LanguageFactory is kind of weird because I gave it that name because it's a mix between a language service and an editor factory. So I call it LanguageFactory. It inherits from a class called LanguageBase. It exists now in the toolkit. So this is very, very basic. It's a very short short file here. It basically says, okay, what's the name of the language service? In this case, it's called PackageDev, or the language name, if you will. It's called PackageDev. It's coming from, I have a file called constants. Sometimes I like to keep a file called constants just to have like one place of authority for these type of fields. And then what are the file extensions? And so again, we have 2 file extensions, PackageDev and PackageUndev. Very few people know about PackageDev, and even fewer know about PackageUndev. But those are the 2 file names. And then if I want to, I could override, if I wanted to have those drop downs, I could override this particular method, which I have. And then I just have to set what are my default preferences for my language. Like, should we enable code lens, which is still called code sense, which is funny, which was I think the code name for code lens. Do you want to enable brace matching by default? Do you want to enable, you want to show the navigation bar? You can, what's the indentation size and so on. Should I do word wrap? All these things. So that's super simple. That there's really nothing in here, right? But you need this file. And that's because you need it to register on your package class. You just register it like this. You put in these attributes and you just kind of point to that. This is just complete copy and paste into your language. These attributes right here. Just copy them in. That's it. Make modifications. It says PackageDev here, but this is like the same in all my these 3 extensions that I've done. So this makes sure that we
are provided by the toolkit then.
No, these are just regular things. There's nothing that the toolkit does that are new concepts. Okay. The toolkit aims to just make existing concepts easier to grok and use. So these attributes here come from the regular VS SDK. All right, so that was LanguageFactory. Then, and here's the hard part, maybe. This is where we translate the parsed document, our AST, our syntax tree, into a Visual Studio tag. So you can see here, I have an iTagger provider, which I export using MEF. This is 100% Visual Studio SDK concepts. There's no toolkit involved in any of this. But after that, there is, because here so what I do is that I return a new token tagger, which I have right here, which inherits from token tagger base, which is in the toolkit. And so what I have to do here is I'm going to set up a couple of events here. First of all, I'm going to get my document, my parsing document from the text buffer, which I have an extension method that gets me. And then I'm going to listen to whenever that document has been processed. And when it has been processed, here's the handler for that. It just basically calls into tokenize async. It just runs this. So this, I don't know if you remember, but my parser ran on the background thread, right? Background thread. It goes to blue, it stays on the background thread, and then it evokes the event. So this event is fired. We're still on the background thread. Still on the background thread. So when I come down to tokenize async, this is all happened on the background. Okay?
Okay.
So what I do here is I say, okay, for each item in my document item. So this is the items in my AST, in my parse tree. I go in and say, basically add tag to list, but you can also say maybe convert. I should have said convert item to tag. That's actually that's exactly what this is. Convert item to tag. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
And so it's actually pretty simple. I'm getting a list of the existing tags. I'm getting my parse item here. And I can now create a new token tag here. Say whether or not it has tooltips. Oh, I forgot to show the tooltips. It supports outlining and if it has any errors. And then I'm just going to add that to the list. Okay. So if I want to create error list items, I have here, how do I create error list items? I get that here. An error list item is a new concept. It lives in the toolkit. Get tooltip async. If I want to handle tooltips when people hover over things, like here, I hover over things, the word override, and you see that tooltip showing up, the quick info. That's basically what I'm doing here. So I'm saying basically, if I'm hovering over, find the parse item I'm hovering over, and then I can say, okay, if it's one that I want to show a tooltip for, then I'm going to create a tooltip. This is all VS SDK stuff right here. There's no toolkit right here. So container elements, and this, I can put an image on there. You see there's images here and some of the stuff that C# does. And I can have multiple. So I can just return a single one, but I can also return, I can create multiple container elements and return. It just needs an object that is, I think, a framework element. A framework element? A UI element? What's the WPF term for the base framework element? I think it is. Okay, so very, very simple stuff. And then when it's disposed, I'm also going to dispose my document. So my document lives in a property on the text buffer. Okay, and remember the way I got my parsing document was saying buffer.get document. So get document basically just goes in and say, hey, create a singleton property on the text buffer. And I'm just going to new up this. So I only ever have one document per file I have open. Okay.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So my token tagger is where, and you see, this is not a lot of code for what it does. I'm tagging up my entire document. And that brings us to the third file that you need, called editor features. Now, this is kind of interesting. So check this out. It's above a bunch of MEF exports that all have base classes coming from the toolkit that has to do with tokens. It uses this token classification, token this, token that, because it understands token tags, right? Token tagger, type of token tag. When you use the token tag type, which is a toolkit type of iTag, then we can just attach things to it automatically. So here I'm doing iClassification tag. This is syntax highlighting. So I'm basically saying, okay, what specific, so each token tag has like an object. I can do, say, what type of thing is this? And so my object is like, in this case, I have an enum that I use. So, okay, so if it's a register key, what type of classification definition do I want? You can create your own or just use the predefined one. This determines what color and style it's going to have. So there's one called simple definition. That's actually this one, I believe. In C#, it's kind of this teal color. And then string, we know what a string looks like. It's sort of that maroon color. Comment is the sort of the green. We have a keyword that's like public override. That's the blue one. And so on and so forth. So this is all I have to do after I've done my token tagging to show syntax highlighting. That's it. And it makes sure that it handles all threading correctly and throttling and debouncing and all this sort of stuff.
Nice. Okay. So your job is to handle the specific parsing, yep, set the right tagging stuff, and then kind of let Visual Studio handle the making it perform well and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So the toolkit handles sort of the hard part. Yeah.
Okay.
And those things that, where you want to debounce or you want to throttle or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
And then what you do in the editor features is that you then decide which things do you want to bring online. So here I've decided I want syntax highlighting. That's probably a given. You always want that, I'm assuming. So you want that. I also want outlining. I want like outlining, like these code folding here, right? And this one doesn't even take anything. I just create a class that I export. And because the token tag, I already answered the question for which of the tags I support outlining here. In this case, if item is entry, right, an entry property, if entry has any properties. An entry in my tagging is an entry has a register key, and it may have properties. And so if it has properties, I want it to be outlining. Has outlining, right? So I just get that for free. Boom, that's it. Well, what about error tags? What if there's an error? Well, since I already provided error information, I also don't need to specify anything specific here. I'll just inherit, and now I get not just error squigglies, but it also manages the error list and fills that up automatically for me. This is huge because that's actually really hard to do.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So your job is to just, you tag something as an error, provide the information, and then it handles the list. So both in the editor and updating that list.
Yep, exactly. And then we have a quick info. So this is the hover tooltips. So we also handle that in our tagging, right? We went through that. So nothing needed here. Then we got brace completion. And again, this is just MEF exports. There's nothing here that's like nothing in these attributes are from the toolkit. They're just standard VS SDK stuff. But the way you handle brace completion is usually always the same. So let's just have a default implementation, which is what this is, right? And then you can just say, well, what type of things do you want to have automatically completed? So if you open, that's the first parameter is the opening character, and the second is the closing character. So you can remove these, you can modify these for your language, right? So if it was HTML, you probably wanted the angle brackets like that.
Okay.
And then that brings us down. What about complete manager? You don't need a completion commit manager, but what characters should commit from IntelliSense once the IntelliSense list is visible? And you can just specify an array of what things that people might push or click that should dismiss the, select whatever is the active item in the list and dismiss the IntelliSense list.
Okay.
And finally here, there's two more. So we have brace matching. So that's the idea of when brace matching highlights the beginning and end of braces. I don't know if you can see it here. So when I'm next to one, it highlights the opposite one. You get that for free.
Yeah, I was going to say that one I'd assume would.
Yep.
Yeah.
And same word highlighter, you can do that as well. So you get that for free. And some of these do have things you can override. So Robert sent some pull requests to say, hey, can I filter the results here? What are the find options? Like this is an enum. And before you show anything, just let me verify that I want to show this particular word. Like I want to highlight that throughout. And so you have things you can override. But this is it. This is it, people. This is how you do. No, this is how I envision doing it. Yeah.
So a good question on that specifically. And so when you said this is how you do it, and this is now, this is a decent amount of code. This is not every single extension that does this. This is specifically to add support for a language with full support, with going beyond just syntax highlighting and moving to things like brace and error and all that sort of stuff, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Like if you have a TextMate file and you don't care about any other features than what you get from TextMate, then don't do this. But if you want to have error squiggles and all this other stuff, then do this.
Another thing is this is a language specific extension. There's tons of other extensions. You've made extensions that do, there's extensions that do Pomodoro timers. There's extensions that'll play sounds or, like all kinds of stuff, right? So
yep, exactly.
There's a ton.
I have one of my simplest extensions just has one command that inserts a GUID, and I use it almost every day.
There you go.
So yeah.
There's a new website, by the way, Rate My GUID, that allows you to rate GUIDs.
Did you create that, John?
I did not. Oh, there's another one out there. It's like hot or not for GUIDs. And it's basically like, is this GUID popular? And it's like, there are no popular GUIDs.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Aiden asks, would an editor config overwrite defaults? Like, so you've set things like indent size, etc.
Would an editor can override the default? I think it would, yeah.
That actually brought up a different thing. I noticed in one of them you had a one of the files you are ignoring. It was like a pragma ignore because you said you didn't want I don't know, async rename or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so I wondered because there's a few. I was looking into this recently. Yeah. So there's different ways you can do that. You can also do that, I believe, in an editor config if you want. And I wondered if you have, like, I kind of would, a lot of these things I'm kind of like, it depends. Here you've got like an inline because it's only done in one case, I guess, but yeah.
And I feel like you can do it in, I feel like maybe you can do it in.
You can do it here in your project file.
Yeah, it's here. No warn. Is that like a thing? I do this?
Well, you've got disable warning. It's the line below, line 12.
Yeah, but you know, I just haven't really. I feel like it's inconclusive which of these work best. Let's just do both. Let's see what happens. And I'll remove this. I'm gonna compile. Let's see what we get. See, the first time I compile it, see, it gives me the warning.
It does.
MSB 3277, which is exactly the one that I said. How do I zoom in?
Oh, yeah, here, just Control plus.
I thought I could use my the mouse wheel. MSB 3277. So I have both of these, yet it still complains about it.
Interesting.
Oh, I have the experimental instance running. But then the next time I do it, check this out. Now it won't complain about. Actually, it does. Is it when I rebuild? Maybe. So Yen asked if this is also available in VS 2019. It sure is. It sure is.
There's one other question I found interesting, which is about reparsing. And I believe from my look at this, it basically reparses the document each time. I've seen more complex parsers that do a lot of caching, and they'll mark a section, they'll like hash a session or a section and do a quick scan to see what's changed and what hasn't. But for this, and I'm guessing most PackageDev files are small enough, but does that mean, is it like debouncing, or is it like basically every character you type, it reparses the whole document?
So this one goes in and says, when the buffer changes, that means every character you type.
Okay.
When the buffer changes, then so update lines is like basically it sets lines equals lines. So that's not interesting. But it says process async. And so it goes down and it processes async.
Cool.
It says processing equals true. And then when it's done, it says processing equals false.
So that prevents it from, while it's running, it's not going to, like if I type 3 characters really fast, it's going to, the second 2 or 3.
No, that's something that in my parser here that I can optimize for, which is not a bad idea. To say that, hey, I should cancel if I run. So when I ran this, I did all sorts of things with cancellation tokens, and I ran, and it was so fast that it never even once got to cancel anything that was running.
That was what I was going to guess. Yeah, there's some cases where like giant file or whatever. Yes. But this is a simple enough one where it's just you can't go faster.
But then it fires the event, right? So it fires. So let's say you're typing, so it fires events all the time, and where you're listening to that event is in your token tagger. So where we say, hey, when document is processed, tokenize, and check out what happens. It just says, hey, if document is processing, that means that a newer, fresher parse result is going to be available soon. It just aborts. It just returns, like abort and wait for next parse event, right?
Yeah.
So yes, it parses when you type, but it does not update all the Visual Studio tagging and colorizations and all this sort of stuff that requires UI thread. So that's why I kept it the way it is, because it's a UI, it's a background thread only kind of operation.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, so that makes me feel pretty good, I will say. I don't know. This might seem underwhelming because it's like, well, I've never had to do a language before. But let me tell you, if you've ever had to do a language before, it was hard to do. And now it's very, very simple. So in IntelliSense, there's nothing here other than what you get from the regular VS SDK. But pretty simple. That's the new API that was out for async completion, async IntelliSense, which came out in 2019. And it's just a hell of a lot simpler than the old way of doing IntelliSense. So I don't need to like worry about like a completion broker and all those sort of things. It's kind of taken care of. So that's nice.
Can you show again, because it has been a little bit, what is the name of the extension that you've been talking about? And I can put a link to it too.
So the name of the extension is, where are we going? PackageDev language. So this is just an example, but where I was going was that I also, what's it called? This is the one I couldn't figure out. I did the Markdown one. So here's another one I did, which I did the exact same way, Markdown. So because what I wanted to do is that I wanted to make sure that I could, that the stuff I put in the toolkit to abstract away all the hard part of writing in language was flexible enough. So I had to like create basically 3 different languages to implementations to like test out that everything was okay. And so the next one I did was the Markdown editor, which, by the way, if you are using the other Markdown editor, the one that's just called Markdown editor or Markdown editor 64, if you're using the one for 64, which means for 2022, stop doing that, uninstall that, and get V2. Okay, it's a hell of a lot better. Oh, I can see it just got a new star rating here. There we go. And it follows the exactly the same. But what's interesting, so all these 3 different ones are all kind of doing things differently. So here's Markdown. So Markdown, what's interesting here is that I didn't have to parse anything because there's a NuGet package called markdig that is a Markdown parser and can spit out HTML on the other end, and it has the whole AST available. So I didn't need to do any parsing whatsoever, and that was just wonderful.
So most of the parsing's handled, and your job here is to map that over to the Visual Studio stuff. Yeah.
So, but what's interesting about the Markdown one, if we open a Markdown file, we can see it. This one is a little bit different again, because even though it uses a lot of the same things, like it has, let's go back to the blue theme here. It has a preview window. And that's something that people have been asking for. How do you do a preview window? And I kind of made it way too hard in the past. And so I've greatly made it easier to do preview windows. And this one hosts a browser. So if you need to host a browser, it has to be IE11, by the way, unless you want to do the WebView 2 and host it. You're on your own for that one. I don't know how to do that. Visual Studio doesn't have a solution for that yet. So I just use the regular WPF web browser control. For something like this, it's fine. So you see the same things. It also has drag and drop implementation, because I wanted so that if you take a screenshot, let's just take a screenshot here. So now it's in my, well, actually, Drag and drop means I can pull in a file. So I'm going to pull in a file. Oh, here we go. Onto the service here. And see, and it will automatically add a, see, it's over here now. So that's kind of cool, right?
It is.
Or if I take a screenshot, which I just did is in my clipboard, and I can, and I paste it, it asks for where to save it. So that's also super nice. So it has a few other things. It has some options, and it shows how to register those options. And then it has more like validation as well. But the editor, if we look at that, is very similar. This one doesn't have IntelliSense, so we don't have that, but we do have classification types. So this one shows you how to create your own types for, what should things look like? Should something be italic? Should it be bold? Should it have a strike through on underline or whatever it might be? You can define your own classification types here, and then everyone can then come in and go to tools, options, fonts and colors, and then in this case they're all called something about markdown, and then you can find markdown code, markdown header.
Oh, nice.
Right? So you can see these things. So that's kind of cool. You get your drop downs, all that sort of stuff. I did the same thing up here because I thought that was kind of cool, but I then put powered by MarkDig and then the version in there too. I thought that was kind of, pay a little homage to Alexander, who wrote the MarkDig there. So
I have a question / suggestion. So you have the previous Markdown editor V1.
Yeah.
How can you?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, can you forward people to the V2 in some, like you could update your README, you could do an update?
It does that. So if you go here, so if you go to, that's V2. So if we just go to the regular Markdown editor, the Markdown editor 64, then it says it's highly recommended that you use Markdown editor V2 instead of this extension. The reason I have both of them is because this extension does have a few things that I did not want to carry over. It allows you to, that has single file generators that will produce HTML files on disk. And I thought that was kind of messy and had a lot of issues with it because people want to then control the CSS, custom templates, JavaScript, and so on and so forth. And if I get a lot of feedback and people really want that, then maybe I'll bring it back. But the reason I kept them separate is that, if you rely on those features, you should stay on the old Markdown editor. But in terms of like performance and feature richness and accuracy and ease of use and reliability and all this sort of stuff, V2 is a light year ahead.
Okay.
So that's what I can, what I would recommend. And the last one I did, let me show you that one. That one, John, I think you're the web developer and you would kind of appreciate this
one. The upcoming one you're about to show?
Uh-huh. So this one is called REST Client. Here, what I got here is I have a Net Standard 2.0 project, which is where I keep my parser. Okay. And so my unit test is an XUnit thing that also can run cross-plat and whatnot. And this is XUnit. The other unit tests I had was MS Test running on Windows. So this is kind of the latest and greatest, that I can get if I move things into a, let's say, Net Standard 2.0 library. So that's kind of neat. Before I show you anything, let me show you what it is. So desktop test. So this one handles files that ends with .http.
Is that the kind of standard one? Like you can generate those? There's something you can generate from like Fiddler or the web dev tools or stuff.
Kind of. This is one that's the most popular HTTP REST client for VS Code that I ported.
Okay.
It's not fully complete. I don't have authentication yet, but the idea is that you can write, check this out. You can write, like you can have variables, define variables. And you can even have variables that use other variables. So And of course, you get IntelliSense host name here. You get stuff like that. You get outlining. You get all the stuff that you would suggest or that you would expect. And then you have this play button after each of these request definitions here. So let's take this one down here, but this one actually resolves. So just bing.com. Click the button, and boom, I get a split screen. So here again, I use that margin for the preview window, but in this case, it's just basically a text box or whatever.
Oh, slick.
Yes. So I can see what's going on. I can see the response. And
this is really handy.
This is super handy. And I do get some validation here. So if I screw it up and I hover over, it says, hey, this is not a valid absolute URI or URL, right? Because I just made it invalid.
Oh.
Or if my host name here, port 8080 foo, you see, then I get squiggles down here because they're not. And so to the question that was before, like, do you parse the entire document or just whatever you're watching? In order for me to revalidate things further down, I have to parse the whole document. Okay. Otherwise, I wouldn't get these error squiggles down here if I made that change up here. So that's how that works. You always want to parse as little as possible. Like, what is the delta, and only kind of reparse that if you can. And so that's what C# does, and all those, that has like dedicated engineers for years and years. So that's where you want to go if you can. But if you cannot, figure out, is it a problem? How big? What are the biggest files you can open where it's not an issue? And chances are they're going to be pretty huge.
So from people are liking this in the comments, and then so to be clear, and I think people are pointing this out, but this is basically a port of the VS Code extension, or it's kind of okay.
Yep.
So there's and does it work pretty similar as far as okay?
You can see here you can have we can add the content type, application, JSON or whatever, right? So you see now they become a unit. You can collapse them. They're seen as the same thing. Oh, you can execute it. In this case, it didn't really give us any difference. It just returned the same thing. But yeah.
So question, can you capture results and put them in variables and use them in subsequent queries and stuff?
No. Like return. Yeah, no.
Okay. Because that could be interesting. Like, because a flow that I'll use regularly is like some sort of authentication. You get a token back and use the token for future queries or stuff like that. So.
That's cool. I think there's a lot of applications for this type of thing. One is obviously that you just want to hit your local host port 8080 to see if your web API works, right? So that's just for you and your team to use. But another really interesting aspect of this is you can point people that uses your API to this file and say, here's how to call my API. So you actually use it for documentation to a certain degree. And that's really cool. And then of course, because it works in VS Code as well, it's kind of nice that way.
Yep. Yeah. Nice.
All right. So just really quick to just do this one as well. So this one is the exact same. This one has a play button adornment, right? So this one has that green play button. And this is, again, there's nothing toolkit here. This is just regular stuff. But if you want to put something on the page, here's how to do it. It has IntelliSense, and here it has an IntelliSense catalog. So I get IntelliSense for some things. So that's kind of nice. Oh, I should have gotten IntelliSense for HTTP. Do I not do that? So if I do post, okay, HTTPS foo.com accept. Oh yeah, I do get here. So content type. See, that's kind of nice.
That is nice.
And so those are just static. And so I just keep like a catalog. These are basically just dictionaries, right? So kind of basic stuff here. So that I can provide IntelliSense for that in here. So that's
cool.
That's it. And the rest is the same. It just has these MEF exports right here. Nothing new. So I really like this. If you want to play around with adding support for a new language, I highly suggest that you try out this new thing. It's fantastic.
And that one is called REST Client?
Yeah, this is REST Client.
Okay.
There is actually another one called REST Client too, but I need to change this name because I noticed that the one for VS Code is capital REST Client, like in capitals like that. So let's fix that and let's upload a new version. Oh yeah, and I see in this one I also put in something in the .github folder that we talked about, like how to report bugs and stuff. So updated title of extension, and I'm just gonna do release, and like in 5 minutes it'll be live, and we'll have gone through verification on the marketplace that everything is fine. And so
very cool. Wow. Okay.
Cool.
I'll definitely use that.
Do we have any questions?
Let me see. Okay, one question. Just I don't know if you have time or whatever, but this is presenter mode. Can you do a real quick demo of presenter mode?
Real quick demo of presenter mode. Yes. So the presenter mode extension puts a button right here that says presenter mode. It's kind of, it's right there. And so what it does is that if we go to tools options, we get a presenter mode, and we can say, what do you want to have happen when you hit that button? And so I changed the zoom level to 140. Mm-hmm. And in case you have a big monitor, like I resize my monitor to 1080p, so I actually don't want to do resizing like this. But if you don't need to do that, for instance, if you're recording video with Camtasia, you can lock to the window, the recording area to the window, and so in that case, just resize the window to 1080p. Right? What about theme? What theme should I use? Dark or blue or whatever? So I think it should be blue. And then do you want to close all tool windows? And this is about like cleaning up. We are guilty of that at Microsoft, and I've seen that so many times when you want to show how to do something in C# and you see the toolbox is visible on the left-hand side and the solution explorer there, and then you have the watch windows are open underneath or whatever, and you have this little tiny area in the middle where you can see code. So auto hide everything.
Yep.
So that's what happens. So if we click this now, I don't know what happens. I'm already 140%. Nothing really should happen here.
This is nice.
It closed the tool and it closed the window here. So that was it.
It's funny. I at one point started looking into, I may have even talked to you, but I had an idea for all this stuff I wanted to do in presenter mode. I had some more like advanced features I wanted to integrate in with slides and other stuff, for, another thing I wanted to do, maybe I'll get a pull request, but is I wanted to have presentation timing, like a real small thing down in the border or something, basically just showing how much time's left in the presentation.
So you could you could inject like a little timer in the status bar.
Exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. You could totally do that. Basically, take every minute it just ticks, and then when it gets to the last minute, it will like do seconds or something.
Yep, and maybe turn like an alert color, or do something.
Yeah. You could do that. There's no API to get into the status bar, but you can muscle your way through the WPF tree.
Fun.
I've done it several times, so it's totally possible.
Okay.
So when we are talking about like presentation mode, I use font sizer too. So font sizer, I like. So I can go. Let me just go to 100% size here. So I can just do control and then plus, and this is the plus out by my numpad. All right. So I can see my zoom is still 100%. I'm actually increasing the font size because what that does is that increases other things around it too, like different hover controls and so on. But I could do Control Shift plus, and that does the environment. Look at that. You see that? My window.
Oh, yeah.
Explorer.
That's similar to the effect you get in VS Code, where you do when you zoom VS Code, the entire thing zooms, right?
Right. Yes, which is usually not what I want. I just want the editor window to zoom in. So I don't necessarily like the way that it's that it works in Visual Studio Code. So
I kind of agree. I have had cases that the time where I really like what you're just showing, the font sizer, is when I'm doing screenshots for, like documentation or something.
Yeah.
That's a time where I want, and I don't just want to zoom on the screen. Like I want like a nice, you know what I mean? So being able to zoom the entire fonts, all the environment fonts is handy.
Agreed.
Very cool.
Let's see if the REST client has been updated. Not yet. It still doesn't have capital REST up here. Okay. Any more questions?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, there
was a question about publishing the Help Explorer.
Yeah. Can you highlight that? Am I going to publish the Help Explorer anytime soon? It was actually an internal experiment. Would it be helpful to people? I can publish it. I don't know how much value it will add. So the Help Explorer is this contextual tool window that help new users kind of start new projects and find documentation and stuff that's context aware. So depending on what file you're editing, what type of project you've got open. The problem with that as an extension is that the people that need that are new users, and new users don't go out and install an extension on how to get help. So this has to be kind of built in. And so it's a proof of concept to have it it was an internal proof of concept for doing to see how we could do that, if it would make sense. And so I don't know if I want to put it on the marketplace. I don't think it will add value to anyone.
Okay.
But Danny, maybe it would add value to you, and in such case, I would like to hear why that is.
Sounds good. I think that was about it.
Okay. Man, are we hitting the hour and a half marker?
We're almost exactly at the hour and a half marker. I think here's one that I actually had started this earlier. And what does it take to implement a refactoring like rename?
Right. So if you want to do refactoring like rename, and you want to do it on your the same file, let's say that you have a PackageDev and you want to rename a GUID to another GUID. You can very easily do that if you have the. You can either do it just by simply find and replace. Now that's a stupid find and replace, right? Because it could be in a comment, and do you really want to rename that too? In that case, if you have something like find all references or go to reference, if you know if there's a relationship between your things, like there was in my where did that go? The REST client, where we had variables that we can go to definition, which I forgot to show you, but you can actually go to definition on the REST client stuff. So if I'm on, let's say, the host here, and I hit F12, let's see here. Does that not work? Good. Oh, I don't know. It was supposed to work, but it will theoretically jump you to host. So line 3 here. So if you have that done and you know the relationship between what you're renaming and things that are pointing to that thing you're renaming, then you can go ahead and do that. And in the same file, it's fine. If you have a language, like let's say you want to implement Java, you probably need something along the line of Roslyn, which is like you need something that understands, or the C++ engine, right? Something that understands all the code in your workspace. And so that allows you then to rename across files. And if you've been if you've been using Razor or ASP.NET, you know that renaming across files, especially across file types, is very complicated to do. Just because it when did we get rename across? Like 1610, like less than a year ago, I think we got rename from a C# class. Would rename if you're pointing to that class.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
From a Razor view, it would rename into the Razor view. That never worked until like very recently. So that's a complicated matter. But if everything you do is the same language service that takes care of it, then you can probably do it. But I would say it probably requires you to do the whole, like that you have something like go to definition and find all definitions. So find all implementations already hooked up, so you have those relationships. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, in a lot of cases, what this may be asking too is, if you're writing just a refactoring, you can also do an analyzer, like to provide a quick fix, right?
Well, you can write an analyzer for C#, but they already have a rename feature.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So not rename, but I'm trying to think, like when I think of refactorings, I'll also think sometimes of like an analyzer that will implement a quick fix sort of thing. I'm going in a different direction, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you could. The old Markdown editor had suggested actions, like they had like, light bulb things, and so you can implement light bulbs, but it doesn't. That's just your entry to firing off that command. It doesn't change the fact that you still need to know what points to the thing that you are renaming.
Okay.
So.
All right.
All right. Now we're no longer on time. We're like,
yeah, we're not. We're at an hour and a half. Probably a good place to wrap up, I guess, huh?
Yeah, that sounds good, man.
All right.
I think
this is fun. I downloaded some good new extensions, so it's a win for me. And had a lot of good questions going on, and it's the weekend, and it's a 3-day weekend here in the U.S. That's a nice thing.
That's right.
So,
yep.
All right. Well, I guess I'll search for the thanks for watching video, and we can wave goodbye. Sound good?
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Right. Thanks a bunch.
Have a great weekend.
There, come on, I'm trying to hit that. I keep hitting thanks for watching, and it's not playing. That's just awkward.